Our call to worship is by the Reverend Sharon Wiley. It is said that ministers are here to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. I say we are all afflicted and we are all comfortable. May our time together this morning be a comfort and a confrontation. May we here find peace in times of tumult. May we here invite tumult into lives of peace. May we here find calm in times of restlessness. May we allow restlessness to evolve into action. Let this be the place you consider what you've never considered. Let this be the place you imagine for yourself something new and unthinkable. May this hour bring dreams of new ways of being in the world. Come, let us worship together.
Today's chalice lighting reading comes from Karen G. Johnson. Do not be alone right now. Do not be alone right now. Gather together. Gathering together grows courage in ourselves and in others who see the numbers swelling. It is a small thing,
it is said that ministers are here to comfort the
it is an
afflicted
important
and
thing.
to afflict the comfortable.
Great sources of wisdom remind us, just because you cannot stem the tide of all hate, it is still right to do the thing you can do.
May we here find peace.
These things add up.
Tumult.
Your one thing,
May we here
my
invite
one thing,
tumult into
his one
lives
thing,
of
their
peace.
one thing, her one
May we
thing.
here find calm
Together,
in times of
it
restlessness.
becomes a big
May we
thing.
allow restlessness to evolve into
Do not
action.
be alone right now. Any
Let this be the
liberation,
place you
all
consider what
liberation
you've never
is
considered.
collective liberation.
Let this be the place you imagine
My
for
freedom
yourself
is bound
something
with
new
yours
and unthinkable.
and yours with mine.
May this hour bring dreams of
inextricably.
new ways of being
Let
in
us
the world.
together cast our lots
let us
doing
worship
this
together.
big thing, bending the moral arc of the universe towards justice. Well, good morning,
Today's
everybody.
chalice lighting
I am
reading comes from
Mary
Karen G.
Henninger Voss, and
Johnson.
I am a
Do
mere
not be alone
acolyte
right
at the feet of the members
not
of the
be alone right
UCH
now.
Social Justice
Gather together.
Roundtable, who are the
Gathering together
organizers
grows
and lay
courage
liturgists
in
for this
ourselves
morning's service,
and in others
who
by the
see the
Reverend
numbers
Sharon
swell, and it will
Wiley.
be amazing.
It is a
It
small
is said that
thing.
ministers are
We
here
are
to
honored
comfort the
to have as
afflicted
guest speaker
and to
Rabbi
afflict the
Michael
comfortable.
Pollack.
Great sources
I
of
say
We're also
wisdom
delighted
remind
this
us.
morning to welcome our
Just
new
because you
accompanist,
cannot stem
Chris
the
and
tide
May our
of
time
all
together
hate,
this morning
it is
be
still right to do the thing you can
May
do.
we here
The
find
many
peace
other
in
people
times of
involved in
tumult.
making this
May we
morning
here
a
invite
total
tumult
experience
into
are
lives
listed in
of
your
peace.
order of
Her
service.
May we here find calm
Whether
in
you are a
times of
longtime
restlessness.
member or a first-time
May we
visitor,
allow
whether
restlessness
you
to
are
evolve
here
into
in
not be
person
alone
or
right now.
online,
Any
Let
we
this
are
be the
so
place you
happy
consider
that you
what
have
you've
chosen
is
to join us
collective
this morning.
Let this be the place you
And it
imagine
doesn't
for
end at the
yourself
end of the
something
hour.
new
After
and
the
unthinkable.
service,
with mine.
May
we
this
invite
hour bring
everyone
dreams of
to
new
join us
ways
for
of
our
being in
Let
the
Us
world.
Together
most
cast our
important group
lots participation
doing this
ritual we
big
have coffee
thing.
hour.
Bending the moral arc
In person,
of the
you will
universe
find coffee and other
towards
refreshments
justice.
downstairs in the common room. And if you're online,
Well, good
a
morning,
Zoom
everybody.
online coffee
I am
hour will
comes
follow
from
the
Mary
service
Henninger
starting
Voss,
at
and I am a
11:30.
mere acolyte,
But you do
at the
have to bring
feet
your
of
own
the
coffee.
members
Not
of the
be alone
UCH
right now.
Social
In the
Justice
spirit of
Roundtable,
transformative
who are the
power,
organizers
community,
and
all
lay
its
liturgists
forms,
in
I am so
ourselves
happy
and
to
in
welcome
others
you
who see
to
the numbers
UCH
swell.
and it will be
And
amazing.
any
It is
of
a
our
small
in-person
thing.
or
We are
online
honored
activities
to have as guest
important
speaker
whoever
Rabbi
you
Michael
are.
Pollack,
Great
wherever you
sources of
live. So
wisdom.
delighted
Wherever
this
you
morning
love,
to welcome our new
because
whatever you
you
do
cannot
for a
stem the
living,
tide
May our
of
time
you
all
together
are
this
welcome
morning
is still
at the
right
Unitarian
to do
Church
the
of
things you
Harrisburg.
can do.
May we here
The
find
many
peace
other
in
people
times of
involved
Join
in
us
making
for our
this
covenant
morning
May we
a
hear
total
invite
experience
tumult
are listed in your order of service.
May we here find calm
Whether
in
love
times of
is
tumult.
the spirit
or
of this
first-time
congregation,
visitor.
whether
And
service
here
is its
in
gift
person
or
or
online, this is our great covenant to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth and love, and to help one another. We invite you to stand and body your spirit, and in any case, raise your voices for our opening hymn number 155 in the gray hymnal. Circle round. You will find coffee and other refreshments downstairs in the common room. And if you're online, a Zoom online coffee hour will follow their starting at 11:30 at the feet of the members of the UCH. In the spirit of transformative growth, organizers all liturgists. I am so happy to welcome you to and any of our in-person. We are honored to have as guest speaker wherever you are. So delighted as well to welcome our new speaker. Whatever you do for us, you are welcome. The many other people involved in making our covenant a totally glorious service in your order of service. Whether love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth and life, and to after the service. We invite you to stand and body your spirit, and in any case, raise your voices for our opening hymn, 155 in the gray hymnal. Circle round, and you will find coffee and other refreshments downstairs in the common room. And if you're online, a Zoom online coffee hour will follow there in at the feet of the mothers of the UCH. In the spirit of transformative I am so happy to welcome you to and any of our in-person. We are honored to have as guest speaker wherever you are. So delighted as well to welcome our guest speaker. Whatever you do for us, and declare you are welcome. The many other people involved in making our covenant a totally glorious service in your order of service. Whether love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell
It's time in
together
our service for Time for All Ages. Before I do the story this morning, I just want to read a few words that Corey sent out this week in her RE newsletter about resistance. Out of all the themes this year, resistance is the most complex, or maybe it's the most simple. Often the path of resistance asks us to stay in it for the long haul. But just as often, it's about taking that first tiny step. Maybe it's not more courage that is required, but more connection. Maybe what we really need to hear is not simply resist, but I will resist with you. Our story today is entitled One, and it is written by Catherine Atoshi. And by the way, this book can be found in our church library downstairs. Blue was a quiet color. He enjoyed looking up at the sky, floating on the waves, and on days he felt daring, splashing in rain puddles. Sent out this week in her RE newsletter. Every once in a while, he wished he could be more sunny, like yellow, resistant or bright, like green, or regal, like purple, or outgoing, like orange. But overall, he liked being for the long haul. Except just as often when he was with Red. Red was a hothead. He liked to pick on blue. Red is a great color, he'd say. Red is hot, blue is not. And it's not simply feel bad about being blue, but sometimes yellow comforted blue. Blue's a very nice color, she'd say. Our story today, yellow never said that in front of red. And she never said, stop picking on blue. Green, purple, and orange thought blue was nice too. But they never told Red to stop either. Every time Red said something mean and no one spoke up, he enjoyed looking up at the sky and bigger and bigger on the waves. And soon Red grew so big that everyone was splashing in rain puddles. No one dared to stop him. Everyone Red picked on all he wished he could be more sunny. And then everyone felt resistant or bright, like green, until or regal, like one came, or outgoing, like orange, different shapes, and bold strokes and squared corners. He was funny. and he made the colors laugh when he was with Red. Red saw this. Red was a hothead, and he got very hot. He liked to pick on. Stop laughing. Red is a grave color. Stop laughing, he told green. Red is hot, blue is not. Stop laughing, he told purple and orange. And they did resist. Red rolled up to her. Sometimes stop laughing. Blue's a very nice color, she'd say. Our story stood up like an arrow. Said that. No. And Red was mad, picking on blue. One wouldn't green, purple, and orange thought blue so nice too. Red rolled away. They never told Red to stop either. One turned to the colors and said something mean. If someone is mean and picks on me, I, for one, stand up and say, no, bigger on the waves. Then yellow felt brave and said, and me too. Everyone was afraid. Green agreed and said, me three. And purple became four, and orange became five. And blue saw the colors change. And then everyone wanted to count or bright. Red grew hot. Until he felt left out. He grew hotter and hotter and hotter. Red raced over to blue and said what he always did. Red is hot, blue is not. Colors laugh when he was this time. Red saw Red was a hothead. He got very hot. Red can be really hot, he said. Red, blue can be super cool. Red is hot, blue refused and tried to roll over blue and orange. But everyone took a stand and said, no, stop laughing. Seeing them stand tall made Red feel very, no. And then Red turned even redder, and he began rolling away. So Blue called out, Red rolled away. Can Red be hot and Blue be One turned to the colors and said, Red, if someone is mean and picks on me, I, for one, Red can count too, said one. No, bigger on the waves. Red yellow felt brave and turned into seven. Everyone counted and said, me three, and then Red laughed and orange became red, and blue saw the colors change, and then everyone wanted to count or bright. Red grew hot until he felt left out. He grew hotter and hotter and hotter. Red raced over to blue and said what he always did. Red is hot, blue is not. When he was with time. Red saw Red was a hot very hot. Red can stop laughing, he said. Red, blue can be stop laughing. Red is hot, blue refused and tried to roll over blue and orange. But everyone took a stand and said, no, stop laughing. Seeing them stand tall made Red feel very and then Red turned even redder, and he began rolling away. So Blue called out, Red rolled away. Can Red be hot and Blue be One turned to the colors and said, Red, if someone is mean and picks on me, I, for one, Red can count too, said one. No, bigger on the waves. Red yellow felt brave and turned into seven. Everyone counted and said, me three, and then Red laughed and orange became red.
Well, thanks to the Adopt a Highway crew, they were supposed to talk this morning, and they ceded their time to the Stewardship Committee. So you will not hear how many beer cans were collected and what style of beer they were. That will happen later in the fall. Red is hot. I'm happy to report for the Stewardship Committee that we're getting many letters of thanks.
Red can be really hot, he said. Red, blue can be stop laughing. Red is hot, blue, stop laughing, roll over blue and orange.
I'm not going to read them this morning because we're limited to 2 minutes. I'm happy to say that we're at 65% of our goal, and that's our core goal. Now we're only at 61% of our wish goal. So we got a few dollars to make up. We're at $239,000. This is our budget. This is all of you. We hope all of you can participate. We realize all of you will not be able to, but keep us in mind. There are pledge forms in the lobby and throughout. Thank you very much.
Let us open our hearts and minds now to a time of meditation and prayer, a time to give expression to our joys and sorrows. Life inevitably brings joys and sorrows, worries and triumphs. In community, we often find that sorrows shared are eased and joys shared are multiplied. What burdens of worry or sorrow weigh heavily on you this morning? What joys or gratitudes lift your heart? We invite you to share them now through writing on a slip of paper here, or if you're online, typing them in the Zoom chat. Please indicate whether your message is okay to share out loud, and you can enjoy your joys or sorrows by lighting a candle of hope, or putting a stone into the water of community. Please come up the middle aisle and return on the sides. Spoken or unspoken, our hearts join with yours in bearing and celebrating all that life brings. We have a number of joys and sorrows. Lois Voigt writes, Margie's 57th birthday is today, a fine year, the product of two prime numbers, 3 by 19. This just in from Nancy Hall online. Concern for Michelle Hay, who was admitted to Sloan Kettering with bilateral pneumonia and pleats. Dennis Brune, early organizer for UU Justice PA's wife Linda, passed away unexpectedly last weekend. Dennis and Linda were married for over 58 years. From Robin Miller, I want to remember Dr. Claudel, who passed away last month. He was a kind, generous person and a fantastic physician who cared for children. I worked with him at Holy Spirit for many years. That's from Dr. Robin Miller. Two very separate joys from Laura Ettinger. So happy to have Chris join us as our new accompanist, and my sister has rejoined society after being incarcerated for a couple of years. And now a time of prayerful, healing silence to be followed by our meditation hymn.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and mine. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine.
May we be bold and courageous together, by Erica Hewitt. The word courage comes from the Latin cor, which means heart. According to poet Mark Nepo, the original use of the word courage meant to stand by one's core, a, quote, striking concept that reinforces the belief found in almost all traditions that living from the center is what enables us to face whatever life has to offer, unquote.
To encourage means to hearten, to impart strength and confidence. This is our work as a religious community, to encourage one another, to be bold in encouraging the world around us, as well as what scares us internally, to give one another the confidence and heart to live as fully as possible. I believe we have words for the congregation now. With full hearts, we affirm our relationships with one another. We recognize our agency and our connective power, and we accept our responsibility to be bold and courageous. Our chalice has lighted. It's a symbol of all that we are, all that we have done together, and all that we will be as our shared ministry encourages those within and beyond our walls.
It's my honor today to introduce our speaker, Rabbi Michael Pollack. Rabbi Pollack grew up in Rockville, Maryland, and during his last year of rabbinical school in 2016 in Philadelphia, he co-founded March on Harrisburg, a group dedicated to making corruption illegal and taking our democracy where it's never been before by passing anti-corruption, pro-democracy bills in Pennsylvania. Michael is also one of the Pennsylvania statewide tri-chairs and the faith team leader of the PA chapter of the Poor People's Campaign. He does training for nonviolent civil disobedience for Pennsylvania Action on Climate, the resistance group that merges March on Harrisburg and climate activists. And this just in, I learned this yesterday, Rabbi Pollack will present a workshop entitled Building a Statewide Nonviolent Democracy Movement at our UUA General Assembly in Pittsburgh in June. Michael lives in Philadelphia, and his hobbies include convincing politicians to not be corrupt, long marches through the Pennsylvania countryside, barnstorming around the Commonwealth to speak about the work of March on Harrisburg, and sitting down in inconvenient places at the state capitol. Welcome.
Thank you all so much for having me. It is great to be here. It's great to be back. I'll say I started really organizing back in 2016 for real, and the UUs have been there every single step of the way. On our first march from Philadelphia to Harrisburg in 2017, Anita, you arranged housing everywhere, I think from Pottstown all the way through Harrisburg. Reverend Joan, I've been with you in the Capitol so many times over the years. Margaret, our work together in the Poor People's Campaign has been great, and many other people in this room. You know, you're all doing good work, and it is just so appreciated, and it's great to be here with you all. I'm just going to give a few more announcements before I really dive in here. Monday, April 3rd, this month, tomorrow, at 7 o'clock, there is a Poor People's Campaign 101. Margaret definitely has the details, as do I. happy to get them to you. It'll be a virtual introduction to the Poor People's Campaign. And then right after this, at 1 o'clock at the East Shore Area Library, we'll be doing a Disrupt the Corrupt tour event. If you miss it today, don't worry, because it'll happen again in this exact building on June 3rd. We'll be back. So yeah, today I'd like to talk about how we seem to be stuck. And I'd like for us to dream and imagine today about what the world could look like, what our society could look like. I am, of course, also going to be speaking from the Jewish tradition. This is what I'm fluent in, what I know. So one of our founders, his name was Abraham. He mythologically lived many, many years ago, about 4,000 years ago. And he grew up along with his family and his future wife, Sarah. They grew up in the capital city of Ur, which was the capital of the Sumerian Empire. It was a violent and corrupt place. They were trapped. One time, Abraham went for a walk, and he saw the Tower of Babel being built, right? That famous mythical Tower of Babel being built. And he noticed that the workers would go up the scaffolding, drop off a brick, walk down the scaffolding. And when a brick would fall off, everybody would stop, the managers would yell, the inventory people would come in and raise a ruckus, and they would cry for a brick. But when a person fell off and died, they just kept going. Nothing really happened. Another time, Abraham was walking through the countryside outside of Ur in the suburbs of the capital city, and he saw a house on fire. And he looked inside and he saw God, and God was crying out, "Help, help, I'm stuck, I'm trapped in this flaming building." And it's that indifference to humanity, that prioritization of gold, of property, that cages the divine, that domesticates and stifles the divine in our world. And so one time Abraham went into the capital city, he went into the capital itself, into the temple, and he got into a debate with the king. The king's name was Nimrod. That's kind of a name that's stuck in the English language and taken on some new meaning. Right? So Abraham's talking with a Nimrod, and Nimrod says, "Bow down to me." Abraham says, "No." Nimrod says, "Well, you must at least bow down to the fire that we worship." And Abraham says, "Well, you worship fire, but did you know that water can put out fire?" And Nimrod says, "My God, okay, we must worship water." And Abraham says, "Well, you know that clouds actually contain water and they trap the water." And Nimrod says, "Okay, I guess we'll worship the clouds then." And Abraham says, "Well, actually, the wind blows the clouds." And Nimrod says, "Okay, we'll worship that." And Abraham says, "Well, actually, a human being can withstand the wind. So why don't we just worship ourselves?" And Nimrod said, No, you're playing word games with me. We worship fire in this empire. That's the violent force in the world. We worship fire. It can burn, it can consume, it can destroy. That's what we worship. And I'm going to throw you into a pit of fire." And so in a scene very much like the book of Daniel, Abraham gets thrown into this pit of fire. And of course, a miracle happens. Abraham walks out, unscathed, and he gets his family together, and they leave. And they get out of Ur, and they head west out of Ur, and they become nomads. They decide, we don't want to live in this empire. We cannot live this way where we worship property, where we despise holiness, where we worship force, where might equals right, where the guy with the gold makes the rules. We got to get out of there. And they did. And they left. And that's the beginning of the Jewish people, right there. Human beings have incredible creativity in deciding how we're going to live, what our social structures are, how we relate to each other, what our values are, what matters in life, what goals we orient ourselves toward. There's a wide variety of this. wide variety in the human experience. And yet, like the people of Ur, we seem stuck. We seem kind of stuck in this. The guy with the gold makes the rules, might equals right. The boss tells you what to do, the workers just listen. Right? We're stuck in the social relations that we have now. And it doesn't need to be this way. I'd like to give an example of a group of people that lives very differently than we do. There's a tribe in north central South America that until the modern era would actually change the way they lived midway through the year, every single year. They'd flip everything on its head. And this story comes from, by the way, a book called The Dawn of Everything by David Graeber and David Wengrow. I highly recommend it. And they talk about how this tribe, this group of people, for half the year, they live in the highlands in villages of 1,000 to 10,000 people. And there's a chief, and the chief is able to say, you broke the law, here's the punishment. We're going to enforce it. The chief also was the person sitting in the middle of the town who would collect all the taxes and distribute everything. It was a clearinghouse for the poor. The chief was the poorest person in town. They never actually had anything. Things would come in, they'd go right back out. But then during the dry season, they abandon the towns in the highlands, and they go down into the plains, and they live in small bands of 10 to 50 people, hunter-gatherer bands. And in that way of living, nobody is allowed to say, you broke this rule, here's your punishment. Altogether they can say that, but there's no one person vested with that authority. They can switch, and they do, every single year how they govern, how they live, how they relate to each other. And we also do that. We do that here in this country. We do that all over the world. We call it here, our main switch in our society today is called the holiday season, where all of a sudden, Charlie Brown comes on TV to tell us all what's really important in the world. And it isn't money, productivity, quarterly stock returns, meeting your quotas at work. None of that matters, right? Family matters. Quality time, giving gifts to loved ones, taking care of people, hospitality, right? Those are the core values during that time of year. And it's hard for people to adjust. And it's even harder for people to adjust back. Coming back from holiday is not easy. Coming back from being with family where everybody is pretty flat, right? There's not really, in some families there's definitely, the patriarch and whatnot, but for the most part it's a pretty egalitarian setting. And then you get back to the workplace where if you don't listen to your boss, you might lose your health insurance and starve. It's very coercive. There's other holidays in history that function this way, of course. In the medieval time, there were many saints' days, St. Joseph's Day, St. Anthony's Day, St. Mark's Day, etc. They still exist. And in those days, they would flip the value structure on its head. Some of those holidays, they would elect a child as king for the day. Some of those holidays, they would take the priest and mock the priests, mock the clergy, make fun of them. And sometimes people kind of liked it. And they said, wait, this 6-year-old who we just made king is really much nicer than our usual king. Maybe we don't want to go back. Maybe we would like to stay this way. And that is the history of May Day in particular. And in medieval times, May Day, which is today International Workers' Solidarity Day, was a day that launched a lot of revolts. Because on May 2nd, people said, wait a second, it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. We don't have to be so stuck in this terrible way of being, where the king tells us what to do, takes half our stuff, and then sends us off to die on a battlefield somewhere. It doesn't have to be that way. In fact, it's better when the 6-year-old's in charge. Other holidays, just to name a few, in Judaism, we just celebrated Purim a few weeks ago. It's a classic flip everything on its head kind of a day. In Judaism, we wear costumes, right? You're not yourself, you're someone else. We prioritize gifts to the poor. We prioritize hospitality. At the synagogue where I usually go in Philadelphia, we put the rabbi into a dunk tank, and kids throw balls at the dunk tank, and the rabbi falls in. Another synagogue I've taught at in Philly, they do the whipped cream pies to the face of the rabbi. Goggles are key for that, really important. Safety first, everybody. So we have so many holidays where we get that taste of an inverted power structure. We get a taste of a different value set, a taste of a different way of being. And then we go back to the workday. We go back to the work week. We go back to the way things are now. But we have that glimpse, that taste of something different, of something better. Just in a kind of a generic sense, there's that popular phrase, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, or when I'm on vacation, I'm somebody else. There's different sets of rules at the beach. There's just, right, we all have these in our lives, times of the year where there's just a different way of being. The Vegas example's terrible, but that's just a commercial that I hear all the time. But it's that idea, right, there's a more relaxed value set at the beach. There's just different priorities. What's important changes. And there's a holiday coming up on the Jewish calendar this week that I'd like to talk about a little bit, Passover. And on Passover, we sit around at a Seder and we ask a question. If anybody here has been to a Seder, you've heard it. Ma nishtana balayla zeh mikol halelot. Why is this night different? What is different about this night? What are we doing that is different than what we usually do? And when that question is asked at the Seder, the youngest person there will teach everybody, right? Again, inverted. It's not the elder who's teaching, it's the youngest person is teaching. And they'll give 4 answers to that question. And I'm not going to go through them, but I'm going to give some other answers to that question of what is different. How do we flip everything on Pesach, on Passover? One value that we prioritize, that we really pride ourselves on, is hospitality. On Passover at the Seder, we say the line, let all who are hungry come and eat. The door is opened, and anybody and everybody who needs a meal, who needs some company, is welcomed to come on in and join. And that hospitality is quite absent from our day-to-day way of being in our dominant worldview that we have, right? When the French Jesuits first came to North America in the 1600s and interacted with the Wendat tribe of Quebec, they realized that our notion of freedom, of hospitality, of travel is just wrong. The French Jesuits would say to the Wendat, we're free, we can travel, we can do whatever we want. And the Wendat said, you may have the right to travel, but that's only if you can afford to stay at the inn. That's only if you can buy your own meals and supply yourself as you go. The Wendat said, we have an obligation toward hospitality, and that makes real freedom of travel for all of us. That means real freedom for everybody, because I can go from Quebec down to Mississippi and I have a place to stay every step along the way. And in movement spaces, we value that hospitality. I'll say I've never paid for lodging in the state of Pennsylvania. And I've been everywhere from Erie to Philly, from Scranton to Westmoreland County, many a time. Never paid for lodging, not once. Right? And that hospitality, that freedom that was contrasted there between the Wendat and the French, it's such a value that is so important when we're resisting, when we're striving for justice, when we're building movements. To take each other in, to support each other, to give ourselves that real freedom to move around, that real freedom to interact, to build community, to organize together. One more thing about Passover, something that's different that day, and we all have holidays in our lives like this, there's no work. Again, the stock price doesn't matter, the quota doesn't matter, whatever your boss is telling you, who cares? It's not a materialized day. It's not a materialistic day. It's what Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel would call a temple in time. We're not constructing a Tower of Babel. We're building a temple in time. Flips the value structure on its head. It's not about what you can construct with your hands, it's what you can construct with your soul. It's a different way of being. Also, on Passover, we have No lords, no masters, no nothing. It's a flat structure at the Seder table. Everybody sits comfortably. Kulanu mesubin is the Hebrew for that. We all have a pillow, we all recline, we all sit comfortably. Nobody's on a throne that's higher than anybody else. We're there together. There is no master-slave relationship. There is no lord-serf relationship. There is no employer-employee relationship. There is just people together, friends and family and community. The key is the family obligation. That's the key. And then one more thing, and I really want to dive into this last point here. On Passover, we're reminded of the Exodus story. Of course, that's what it's all built around. And in the Exodus story, that only happens because there is a big value flip that happens for Moses at the burning bush, right? We're going to go back in the Bible a little bit. Abraham, Sarah, they have that value flip. They get out of there. They run away from the empire. They build a new life. 400 years later, their descendants are stuck in slavery in Egypt. They've gotten stuck right back in the same Ur. It's not Ur, it's the other empire. It's not Sumeria, it's Egypt, but it's the same setup, same idea. Pharaoh, just like Nimrod, is in charge. Might equals right. And Pharaoh, was anyone watching ABC last night at about 9 p.m.? 10 Commandments was on. It's on every Passover this time of year. But Yul Brynner says as Pharaoh, so shall it be written, so shall it be done. I make the Nile flood, I make the crops grow, I make the sun rise. Pharaoh is God. Pharaoh is the divine. Pharaoh is the arbiter of reality. By the way, just an aside, it's pretty funny that they got the Jewish guy to play Pharaoh and then Charlton Heston got to play Moses. Really, I don't know how that worked out. And so to build up to the burning bush, so Moses grew up in that world of Pharaoh, grew up in that world where Pharaoh was in charge, so shall it be tweeted, so shall it be done. And Moses gets out of that world and gets into a world, and stumbles into the desert. He's a murderer, right? He slayed a taskmaster, he knocked him dead and ran away into the desert, and he's greeted there by desert hospitality, which takes him in right away, doesn't charge him a price to stay, and just makes him one of their own. And Moses becomes a Midianite, he marries Zipporah, his father-in-law Jethro is there, and that's his life. And then the burning bush happens, and he keeps that, getting away from the empire even more. And at the burning bush, one of the last things that happens in that experience is that Moses asks God, when I go back to Egypt, which you're telling me to do, that I need to go back and say, let my people go, who should I say is sending me? And the answer that God gives is, Ehyeh asher ehyeh. I will be that which I will be. I am that I am. It's one of the most profound lines in the entire Bible. I am that I am. I will be that which I will be. Because that is God saying, it's going to be what it's going to be, and Pharaoh is not in charge of that. Everybody living in Pharaoh's world is stuck in Pharaoh's world, even Pharaoh. But that's not how it works. Pharaoh is not in charge. Pharaoh is not God. The way Pharaoh says things have to work are not how they have to work. And by the way, their economic setup was Pharaoh owned 90% of the land in the country and collected a 20% tax on everything. It was serfdom. But that's not the way it has to be. Ehyeh asher ehyeh, it's going to be what it's going to be. And that future is not determined by Pharaoh at all. It never is. When we push for justice, when we lobby for democracy against corruption, we hear all the time, you don't understand how things work here. You don't understand how this system is. You just don't get it. If we made corruption illegal, I just can't even imagine that. What would that even look like? What would an honest democracy even look like? Right? And yet every year, we get a taste of what democracy looks like. We have a holiday, it's called Election Day. And on Election Day, we tell ourselves, our voice matters, our vote matters. One person, one vote. Government of, by, for the people. And we get really worked up about this stuff. Right? And then the rest of the year, election's over. All you can do is prep for the next one. Don't bother them. They're governing. Even though all the lobbyists are going in, that's not for you, right? This is their time to govern. This is not your time to be active. Your time is constrained to Election Day, and that's it. And I know many people in this room despise that logic, right? I know I do. I know Reverend Joan does. I know a lot of people do, right? Because it shouldn't be contained to one holiday. That one holiday where we get that taste of one person, one vote, that needs to extend throughout the rest of the year. Because that one person, one vote value absolutely contradicts the main value of the rest of the year, which is $1, one vote. One person, one vote is what we aspire to. And we get a taste of it every year. And we need to hold on to that and do something with it. When you go into those holy moments where our dominant value structure is flipped on its head, where what is impossible becomes possible for a brief fleeting moment, hold on to that and take it into the rest of the year. There is something incredibly powerful about holy moments, and let that holiness carry you through the rest of the year. When we go on our long marches, when we're hosted by Anita and others as we go, that holiness, that community, that value structure of mutual aid, mutual support, of fighting for one person, one vote, that carries us through the year. And we take those values and try to infuse them into everything else. When Moses first went to Pharaoh, the ask was not, let my people go. It wasn't. No matter what Charlton Heston said in the movie, that's not what it was. The text is clear. It's let my people go for a 3-day festival in the wilderness. That's all Moses asked for, 3 days. Long weekend. Because Moses knew, God knew, that if the slaves just get a taste of freedom, a taste of wilderness, a taste of the divine, a sense of a world outside of Pharaoh's control, they never go back. Just like medieval peasants celebrating May Day, they'll never go back. They just won't. And so these moments at the UU, moments in resistance, moments in the Capitol, moments on the march, moments in direct action, these holy moments where we fight for a value system, where we fight for an authority, a set of authority structures that's different, that's contradictory to what we usually live in. Those moments are special. Hold on to them. Keep fighting, keep pushing forward with them. I think I'll just close out with one final thought here. That when you have that moment, it cannot be extinguished. You cannot extinguish. In a synagogue, the light behind me is never extinguished. I don't know how it works at that UU. I don't know. We call it the Ner Tamid, the Eish Tamid, the eternal flame that cannot be extinguished. And Dr. King talked about this. On April 3rd, 1968, he stood in Memphis, Tennessee, the night before he was murdered. And he said, he gave a very famous speech that I think a lot of people here have heard, I have been to the mountaintop, I have seen the other side. And that's referencing the end of the 5 books of Moses. Moses is standing at the Jordan River, looking across to the promised land that he'll never get to. Earlier in that speech, Dr. King went into what happened before the Exodus story, what led to it, the burning bush. And Dr. King said, And just for context, Bull Connor was a Southern sheriff during the civil rights struggle who was known for massive abuses, dogs, water hoses, torture, all of that. Dr. King says in that I Have Been to the Mountaintop speech earlier in it, he says, Bull Connor does not understand history. Bull Connor does not understand history. Bull Connor does not understand that there is a fire in all of us that no water hose can put out. And that's the burning bush. That's the knowledge that Pharaoh is not in charge. It doesn't have to be this way, and it'll be what it'll be. The divine is trapped in a burning building crying out for help. It's on us to help. The burning bush story starts off with God crying out, Moses, Moses. The rabbis ask the question, why does he say Moses' name? Why does God say Moses' name twice? It's desperation. It's suffering. We must partner with the world, partner with the divine, partner with all that is good, and continue to move forward toward justice and democracy and freedom. Please come see us to learn more about democracy and corruption in Pennsylvania. 1 o'clock, East Shore Area Library, or June 3rd right in this building, or June 20th at your UU General Assembly. Thank you all very much.
The Unitarian Church of Harrisburg is, as always, a freely gathered church of free people. The church is created, sustained, and supported by you. Each month, we share half of our Sunday plate with a local nonprofit organization. For the month of April, UCH will be sharing the plate with the Harrisburg Center for Peace and Justice. Founded in 1965, the Harrisburg Center for Peace and Justice educates the Harrisburg community about housing issues and opportunities and provides counseling and advocacy for individual clients. For those who wish to contribute online, please see the email with the link for today's service or visit uchbg.org homepage for options for contributing. For those who are here in the sanctuary, the collection plates will be passed around by today's ushers. Your financial support and commitment matter. Please consider giving what you are able. Thank you, Chris. All right, as we move into our closing hymn, please rise in body or spirit for number 169 in the hymnal or on the screen, We Shall Overcome.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we'll walk hand in hand someday. We shall all be free. We shall all be free. We shall all be free someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall all be free someday. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall live in peace someday.
Our closing words come from Reverend Sam Trumbore. Go forth in simplicity, find and walk the path that leads to compassion and wisdom, that leads to happiness, peace, and ease. Welcome the stranger and open your heart to a world in need of healing. Be courageous before the forces of hate. Hold and embody a vision of the common good that serves the needs of all people. Thank you all.
Amen.